Hey everyone. Tonight we are going to take a walk through a place you probably shouldn't, at least not alone, and definitely not hungry. You've heard rumors, maybe, that somewhere beyond the crooked birches and the whispering ferns, there's a midnight market where forest gnomes sell pies. Not regular pies. No, these things glow faintly as if stuffed with bottled starlight, their crusts puffed and golden, as though they've been kissed by something much hotter and stranger than fire. And here's the part nobody tells you. If you stumble into their glade uninvited, without a kind heart to prove yourself, you probably won't survive long enough to taste one. So here you are, boots muddy, air damp with moss and fog, breath puffing little clouds as you trudge deeper into the night. The forest doesn't creak with normal night sounds. No owls, no crickets, just the low, vibrating hush of leaves holding their breath. It feels like you've stepped into a story you can't close. The path curves, curls, then spits you into a clearing, and, yep, there it is. Lanterns strung low between mushrooms cast a dim amber glow over tables carved from living wood. Behind them, small figures bustle, no taller than your thigh, their beards braided with twigs, their hats drooping like soft little funnels. And the pies, dozens of them cooling on the tables, radiating a scent that shouldn't even exist. In one bite, butter, berries, roasted nuts, cinnamon, rain after thunder. Your mouth waters instantly, which is inconvenient because the nearest gnome just caught you staring and doesn't look impressed. His eyes squint up at you, shiny as wet stones. He doesn't say hello, doesn't welcome you. Instead, he tilts his head, tapping a tiny wooden spoon against the pie crust like a judge with a gavel. His expression lands somewhere between suspicion and boredom, like he's seen too many wide-eyed travelers stagger in here drooling. You clear your throat, try a smile, maybe even lift a hand in what you hope looks like friendly respect. The gnome doesn't soften. He mutters something to the one beside him, and they both chuckle like kids who just saw someone slip in the mud. One of them points at you with a crooked finger. And this is the part you start to realize. You're not just a customer here. You're being tested. You shuffle closer, boots crunching over moss that feels too springy, almost alive. The pies glow brighter up close, steam coiling like ghost breath. You try to think of something clever to say, maybe something charming, but your stomach betrays you with a loud growl. A few gnomes burst into laughter. Another one shakes his head and mumbles, "Another hungry fool." You want to protest, maybe insist you have coin, food of your own, even good intentions. But before you can open your mouth, you hear footsteps behind you, another traveler pushing through the brambles. He's tall, gaunt, cloaked in something too fine for these woods, and from the second he opens his mouth, he ruins everything. Finally, the man huffs, brushing leaves from his shoulders. "You creatures better hand me one of those pies before I freeze out here, and hurry about it." The air goes brittle. Every gnome freezes in place. Spoons mid-air, laughter dead. You can almost hear the trees shift. The rude man stomps closer, jabbing a finger at the nearest pie like he's ordering at some tavern. The gnome he points at just blinks once, then slowly turns his back. The traveler doesn't take the hint. He slams his fist on the table, rattling the pies. "Do you know who I am?" You glance between them, your pulse kicking, and think, bad idea. The air smells sharper now, metallic, as if the pies themselves are bracing. The rude man sneers, snatches at a pie, and before you can even flinch, the crust pulses with a sudden violet spark. He yelps, dropping it like it's boiling, though his fingers show no burn. Instead, the light snakes up his arm, twisting under his skin. His face twists into horror. The gnomes don't move. They just watch. The man staggers backward, screaming something incoherent as the light bursts from his eyes, his mouth, his chest. And then, nothing. Just smoke, the stink of singed cloth, and silence. You stand there frozen, staring at the spot where he was. The gnomes return to work as though nothing happened. One of them finally looks at you again, spoon tapping rhythmically. His lips curl into a sly grin. "Well then," he says, voice as dry as bark. "Still hungry?" Your mouth is dry, your throat tight, but yet, God help you, the smell of the pies is stronger than ever. You can't tell if it's your hunger or their magic that keeps your feet planted. Either way, you're not leaving yet. The grin doesn't fade from the gnome's face as he studies you, spoon still tapping against that golden crust. Tap, tap, tap. Each little thud echoes louder than it should in the clearing, like the whole forest is leaning in to hear your answer. You try to swallow, but your throat feels stuffed with sawdust. "You didn't flinch," the gnome finally mutters, almost to himself. His eyes narrow, but that doesn't mean much. Plenty of cruel men don't blink when someone else burns. You open your mouth to speak, but the gnome cuts you off with a jab of his spoon. "Not a word yet. I want to see your eyes first." He hops down from the stool behind the pie table. His boots hardly make a sound as he shuffles over, beard swaying like moss caught in a breeze. He's smaller than a child, but the way he looks at you makes you feel like the tiny one here. His pupils are sharp and wet, catching every flicker of lantern light. "Most of you lot," he says, circling you slowly, "come stumping in here with hands out and hearts locked. You think gold buys what kindness cannot. Do you think that too?" You shake your head quickly. "No, He cuts you off again, spoon clinking against his teeth now. "Fast answer. Too fast. Sounds rehearsed. Try again, big one." The other gnomes giggle from their posts. One whispers something in a language you don't know, and the others chuckle like they've heard that insult 1,000 times before. You exhale, force yourself to speak slower. "I don't think gold is enough. I just wanted a taste." The gnome leans back, strokes his beard. "A taste? A taste of what? Tell me exactly. Flavor? Power? Comfort? Or maybe you think a pie solves the hollowness you drag behind your ribs." You blink. That last part hits too close. "Careful," he says, grinning. "Lie, and the crusts will smell it. They puff different when dishonesty is near." Behind him, a pie lets out a faint hiss, steam curling into a shape almost like a pointing finger. The gnome notices, cackles, and waves it away. "See, they know." You rub your palms together, realizing how damp they've become. "I wanted warmth, something good, something alive. The forest feels empty." The gnome stops tapping his spoon. For a long moment, he just stares at you, weighing each word like he's sniffing them for rot. Then he chuckles. "Not the worst answer I've heard tonight. Might even be true." He turns, beckoning you to follow him closer to the table. As you step up, the other gnomes lean forward, their beady eyes tracking your every move. You feel like a contestant on some twisted game show, except the prize is glowing pastry, and the penalty is, well, you just saw the penalty. The gnome plucks a pie from the row and holds it close to your face. The crust radiates a soft golden heat, almost humming. He leans closer, his beard brushing against your sleeve. His voice drops to a whisper. "One question," he says, voice low. "What's the kindest thing you've done this week? Be specific. Don't polish it up for me. Don't make it grand. Just the truth." You hesitate. Your mind races over moments, opening a door for someone in town, offering directions to a lost traveler, sharing bread with a beggar. None of it feels big enough, not here under the scrutiny of pies that seem to breathe. But the gnome's eyes bore into you, waiting. You finally say, haltingly, "I carried a boy across the stream near the village. He dropped his shoes in the water. His mother was too tired to fetch him." The gnome tilts his head, considering. "And what did you want in return?" "Nothing, just I didn't want him to cry." The gnome snorts, half amused. "Not terrible." He taps the pie once with his spoon, and the crust shimmers briefly, as though agreeing. Then he leans closer, his beard brushing against your sleeve. His voice drops to a whisper. "But tell me, when was the last time you did something cruel?" The question sucker punches you. Your stomach twists. You think back, sharp words at the inn, a shove in the market, that one time you ignored someone who needed help because you were tired. The memory prickles hot across your skin. You don't answer. The silence stretches. The gnome nods slowly, as if your lack of words is answer enough. "There it is," he murmurs. "I can smell it on you. Every traveler drags cruelty like smoke on their clothes. The trick is whether you carry more kindness than cruelty. That balance, that's what the pies taste for." Behind him, another gnome pipes up, voice high and sharp. "Ask him about the dream test." The bearded gnome shakes his head. "Not yet. Too soon." He fixes you with a sly grin. "For now, I've seen enough. You may linger in the clearing, but don't touch a crust unless invited, or the pies will answer instead of me." With that, he hops back on his stool, dismissing you like a teacher bored of a student. The others return to their tasks, though you can feel their eyes still flicking to you, still measuring. The smell of the pies grows sweeter now, dizzying, almost like it's worming into your lungs. You realize with a jolt that you're not done being tested. You've only just survived the first question. The air in the clearing never quite settles after that first exchange. The gnomes go back to their busy motions, dusting crusts with sugar like glittering snow, tugging pans from ovens that seem too small to hold them, murmuring in a tongue that sounds like bubbling streams. But their laughter, the real belly-deep kind, doesn't return. Instead, you feel a tension, stretched thin as a bowstring, as if they're waiting for the next fool to prove their point. And the forest, obliging, delivers. Branches snap at the far edge of the glade, lanterns sway. The gnomes all glance up at once, their little bodies going stiff. Out of the shadows comes another traveler, this one dragging his feet through the moss as though the world owes him a smoother path. His cloak is heavy, embroidered in gold threads that have seen better days, and his lip curls before he even opens his mouth. "Well," he sneers, "finally, about time someone offered proper service. I've been wandering in this miserable wood for hours." You step instinctively to the side, giving him space, though not out of courtesy. More like you don't want to be standing in the blast zone when whatever's about to happen happens. The gnome who grilled you earlier doesn't even bother hiding his scowl. "Service?" he mutters, as if the word itself is poisonous. The rude traveler plows ahead, oblivious. "Yes, service! You lot are merchants, are you not? Then I'm a customer. I demand—" He slaps a gloved hand on the nearest pie, pressing down so hard the crust dents. "This one! At once!" The entire clearing seems to hold its breath. The gnome whose pie has been manhandled looks down at the ruined crust, then slowly back up at the man's face. His eyes glint dangerously, like wet coal under moonlight.
"No," he says. The traveler blinks. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean that you are not fit for crust, crumb, or crumb dust, and the oven will agree." The man lets out a harsh laugh. "Do you know who I am?" The gnome raises one shaggy brow. "Do you know who we are?" The man doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches for the pie, scooping it up as if he can will the exchange into reality. And that's when the clearing erupts. The pie shudders in his hand. The glow brightens, swelling from faint candlelight to searing brilliance in the space of a heartbeat. His smirk falters, eyes widening. The crust cracks with a hiss, steam bursting out like a kettle shrieking. He yelps, dropping the pie, but it clings, literally clings to his palm, dough stretching into sticky ropes of light. "What sorcery!" he stammers, jerking his hand, trying to fling it off. The gnomes just watch. You watch. Nobody lifts a finger. The pie makes the decision for him. It pulses once, twice, then erupts in a spray of golden sparks. The man's scream cuts through the clearing as the sparks dig into his skin, worming under it, making him glow from within like a lantern with cracks in the glass. His face twists, half fury, half terror. He stumbles backward, trips over a root, crashes into the ferns. The light burns hotter. His cries choke off. And then, just smoke. A faint smell of scorched sugar and burnt arrogance drifting across the glade. You stand frozen, jaw slack. You know you should look away, but the image is carved into your mind. The gnomes? They just go back to work. One of them shakes his head, muttering, "Every night, always one who thinks manners are optional." Another gnome chuckles, sweeping the ashes into a little clay pot, as if they were no more than fallen crumbs. Your stomach flips. You're still hungry, maddeningly so, but the hunger is now laced with dread. If kindness is the only ticket here, then the line is thinner than you thought. The bearded gnome who questioned you earlier hops back onto his stool, looks at you pointedly. "Well," he says, with mock brightness, "you've had the demonstration. Still eager for dessert?" The others laugh, the sound sharp and bright. You manage a crooked smile, though your voice comes out hoarse. "I'd like to live long enough to try it, yes." The gnome smirks, tapping his spoon against the table again. "Then you'd better learn faster than he did. Around here, rudeness doesn't just sour the crust, it eats you whole." Behind him, another pie hisses, releasing a puff of steam shaped almost like a smirk of its own. And whether it's the oven's doing or your imagination, you swear the pies themselves are laughing too.
The laughter fades slowly, like ripples after a stone hits water, but the scent of the pies only grows stronger. Sweetness clings to the air in thick waves, roasted chestnuts, wild berries, honey crust. Your stomach growls again, rude enough that one of the gnomes smirks without even looking up from dusting sugar. The bearded one, the same gnome who's been testing you since you arrived, reaches down from his stool, plucks a small tin plate from somewhere under the table, and sets it before you with a deliberate clink. Then, with maddening slowness, he selects a pie. It's smaller than the others, just palm-sized, its crust glowing faintly like firelight through parchment. He slices it neatly in half with his spoon, steam curling up in delicate coils. "Let's see if the crust agrees with you," he says, pushing one half across the plate toward you. You hesitate. The last man who touched a pie didn't exactly walk away whistling. Your eyes flick to the gnome's face, searching for any sign that this is a trick. But he just leans back, arms crossed, waiting. Your hand trembles as you reach down.
The moment your fingertips brush the flaky edge, a warmth spreads up your skin. Not painful, just penetrating, like the pie is memorizing you. You lift it, inhale, and gods, the smell nearly makes you weak. You take a bite. The crust shatters delicately, melting on your tongue, buttery and impossibly light. Then comes the filling, berries bright and tart, tangled with something deeper. Almonds? Cinnamon? No, not flavor, not exactly. It's like memory itself, crumbled and baked. You feel heat bloom in your chest, radiating through your ribs, up your throat, behind your eyes. It isn't just taste, it's an invasion. And then, the whispers. Soft at first, curling through your ears like wind in a hollow log. You freeze, eyes darting around the clearing. But the gnomes are silent, watching. The whispers don't come from them, they come from inside. He carried the boy, didn't want him to cry. Your own voice, the words you told the gnome just minutes ago, spoken back at you, wrapped in echo. Then another whisper, unfamiliar, older, a woman's laugh, quick and bright, layered with a phrase you don't recognize. More voices join, half a dozen, maybe more, murmuring in overlapping threads. You catch fragments, a plea, a sigh, a child's humming tune. You choke, coughing crumbs onto your sleeve. The gnome grins. "Oh," he says softly, "it likes you." "What?" You start, but your throat is clogged with warmth. You swallow, and it spreads deeper, until you feel it fizzing in your fingertips. The pies carry more than flavor. They carry us, our kindness, our patience, our spite. Every crumb remembers. The whispers swell, weaving into something that almost resembles music. It's beautiful, but it's also suffocating. You grip the edge of the wooden table, fighting for balance. The gnome hops down, steps closer, his voice cutting through the whispers like a blade. That warmth you feel is us asking if you deserve it. So far, it hasn't spit you back out. Good news. Your knees nearly buckle. You force out. "And if it had?" He shrugs. "We'd be sweeping another ash pile into the pot." The others laugh, not cruelly, more like they've seen this play out 100 times and it never surprises them. The whispers soften, fading back into faint echoes until only one remains. It's a small voice, high and trembling, saying, "Thank you." Just that, over and over. Your throat tightens. You don't know whose voice it is, but it tucks itself into your bones like a secret you're not ready to name. The gnome pats your hand with surprising gentleness. "There, first bite always rattles. Don't worry, you'll learn to listen without choking." The pie half on your plate steams quietly, like it's alive. You stare at it, pulse still hammering, and wonder if you've eaten food or swallowed a ghost. Eat too fast, and the memories overlap until you forget which ones are yours. He gives you a sly wink. Not that losing yourself would be a tragedy. Some travelers are worth forgetting. Your appetite doesn't vanish, but it changes. You're still hungry, but now it's less for flavor and more for answers.
The warmth in your chest doesn't fade. It lingers, curling like smoke in the rib cage, seeping into every breath. You stare down at the remaining half of the pie, steam sighing upward in slow, spiraling ribbons. The gnomes don't push you to eat it. They just watch, their little eyes glinting with an odd patience, as though they know curiosity will do the work for them. You bite again. This time, the sweetness blooms faster, richer, almost intoxicating. The crust isn't just buttery, it tastes like the first bread you ever stole a bite of as a child, crisp and illicit.
The filling is sharp with berries, but each burst carries more than flavor. Each one drips a memory. The whispers return, louder now, overlapping like voices in a crowded tavern. But instead of chaos, they arrange themselves into a current, sweeping you forward. Your eyes blur, your hands grip the table, and the clearing dissolves. You're inside the crusts glow. The world is golden here, rippling like honey in sunlight. Shadows and figures float within it. Gnomes kneading dough, gathering berries, stirring pots. They hum as they work, their voices weaving together until you realize it's the same tune you heard whispered before, a child's song looping endlessly. One figure moves closer, sharper than the rest. A gnome woman, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes soft but piercing. She doesn't look at you exactly, she looks through you, like she's seeing the thread of your memory. She presses a berry between her fingers, and it bursts into glowing juice, dripping into the dough. Every ingredient remembers, her voice says, not aloud, but inside your head. A kindness given, a cruelty endured, nothing bakes clean. The dough shifts, stretching, and suddenly you're standing in the orchard. Trees bent low with fruit, each berry glowing faintly like tiny lanterns. The air is thick with sweetness, but beneath it lies something darker, the bitter tang of old sorrow. You reach for a berry, and the branch jerks away. Another berry drops on its own, bursting against the moss. The juice seeps into your boots, stinging your skin. The voices around you murmur. He took without asking. She gave without waiting. They left without looking back. You stagger, overwhelmed, but the orchard melts away before you collapse. The half pie is gone from your plate, crumbs scattered, steam vanished. The gnome is watching you with a knowing smirk. Saw something, didn't you? You wipe your mouth, throat too dry to answer immediately. Finally, you manage. The orchard, the berries, they remember things. The gnome nods once. Of course they do. That's why we choose carefully who eats. If you're cruel, the orchard feeds you nothing but your own bile. If you're kind, it lets you taste what came before. Both are truths, one sweet, one sour. You lean heavily on the table, dizzy. The other gnomes bustle again, pretending not to watch, though you feel their ears tilted toward you. The bearded one tilts his head. Did it frighten you? You swallow. Yes and no. It felt like being caught, like the orchard knew me better than I do. His grin widens. That's the point. The crust doesn't lie. You glance at the crumbs still glowing faintly on your plate, and for a moment you swear you hear a tiny echo of laughter, childlike, fleeting, almost tender. Then it's gone. The gnome hops off his stool again, brushing crumbs from his beard. Don't get comfortable. That was just the orchard's hello. You still have more to answer for before we decide if you deserve a whole pie. You nod slowly, heart still thrumming with the echoes of voices that weren't yours. You understand now, kindness isn't just a test here. It's baked into the very crust, binding every flavor to memory. And whether you like it or not, the forest has already begun eating its way into you.
The gnome doesn't give you time to settle. As soon as your breathing steadies, he jerks his spoon toward the far side of the clearing. If you're still standing after the orchard's hello, then it's time you read the rules. No traveler stays here without knowing them. You blink. Rules? He grins, hopping down from his stool. Every feast has a recipe. Every bargain, a ledger. Come along. The other gnomes glance at you as you follow him across the mossy ground, their faces unreadable. You notice, though, that none of them steps in your path, almost like the act of walking where you're told is part of the test. At the edge of the glade, half hidden beneath a curtain of ivy, stands a slab of stone taller than any gnome, taller than you even. It leans at an angle, moss thick around its base, ferns curling against its sides. Lanterns hang above it, their glow trembling faintly, casting shadows across the carved surface. The gnome sweeps his spoon at it with mock ceremony. The tablet. You step closer. The carvings are shallow but sharp, each groove filled with glowing lichen that pulses like a slow heartbeat. The language isn't one you recognize, but as you stare, the symbols twist, shimmer, and resolve themselves into words you can read. The rules of the pies. 1. A cruel mouth eats only ashes. 2. A kind act sweetens the crust. 3. Coin is nothing, memory is all. 4. The oven chooses, not the gnome. 5. Take without leave and be taken instead. 6. Leave kindness behind and take pie ahead. Your eyes trace the last line twice, the phrasing odd, almost riddle-like. You turn to the gnome, but he is already watching you, his beard twitching with amusement. Not as simple as buying bread in a village market, is it? He says. No, you admit, reading them again. But what does it mean, memory is all? The gnome taps the spoon against the stone. Clink, clink. Exactly what it says. Coin melts, gems crumble, promises rot. Memory is the only thing that bakes true. A good deed clings to the crust. A cruel one curdles the filling. When you eat, you're eating every act, every kindness, every betrayal that went into the pie. That's why we don't sell to just anyone. Our orchard won't let us. You shiver, remembering the whispers in your skull, the orchard's glow. So the pies judge people. They don't judge, the gnome says, eyes narrowing. They reflect. If you don't like the taste, blame your own hands. You step back, the moss springy under your boots. The forest seems heavier here, listening. The tablet's lichen pulses once more before dimming back to a steady glow. Why write it in stone, you ask? The gnome chuckles. Because travelers don't listen. They nod, smile, swear oaths, then snatch pies like magpies. But stone whispers louder than memory. No one leaves saying they weren't warned. Your gaze lingers on Rule 5. Take without leave and be taken instead. You swallow. What does that mean? The gnome's grin sharpens. Exactly what you think. Pies aren't stolen. They steal back. You glance at the ashes from earlier, the traveler who had demanded instead of asked. The image is still fresh enough that your skin prickles. The gnome hops away from the slab, waving you to follow. Now you know the rules. The rest is up to you. You hesitate, glancing once more at the glowing words. They seem to pulse harder as your eyes pass over them, almost daring you to misstep. As you step back toward the clearing, you feel it, the sense that the forest itself has just taken your measure, carved your intent into its roots. The rules aren't just carved in stone, they're carved in you now too. And the pies, patient as ever, are waiting to see if you'll break them.
The gnome leads you back into the clearing, spoon swinging idly at his side like a conductor's baton. The other gnomes glance your way as you return, but no one speaks. Instead, they shuffle aside, clearing space near a crooked log where a stranger is already perched. At first, you think it's another traveler. Her cloak is patchy and mud-stained, her boots worn thin. But her face tells otherwise. Deep wrinkles etch across her cheeks like rivers dried in summer, her eyes cloudy yet bright, as though they've stared down too many winters and still refuse to dim. The bearded gnome waves his spoon toward her. "Tell it, old mother, he's eaten enough crust to listen." The woman chuckles softly, a laugh like paper tearing. She turns her gaze toward you, fixing you with a look both tired and sharp. "You think pies are about hunger, don't you? That the gnomes trade sugar and butter for manners?" You hesitate. "That's what it seems like." She shakes her head slowly. "No, it's about survival. Not yours, theirs." The gnomes don't interrupt. They settle on their stools, their work slowing, as though they too have heard this story, but never tire of it. The old woman pulls her cloak tighter. "When I was a girl, the forest was different. The orchard stood untended, trees bending heavy with fruit. Travelers came from every corner, hunters, merchants, priests. They picked the berries, crushed them into pies, ate without thought. And at first, the orchard let them." Her voice drops lower, raspy. "But greed leaves stains. Those travelers quarreled, cheated, stole. They turned the forest foul with their brawls. And the orchard? It listened. Every cruel deed seeped into the roots, into the berries. The pies grew sour, bitter as gall. And those who ate them, they went mad. Some tore their own skin. Some vanished into the trees and never returned. Some burned like kindling the second the crust touched their tongues." Your breath catches. The gnomes watch silently, their little faces grave. The woman's hand trembles as she lifts it, as though recalling the weight of fruit. "My brother, too proud to wait, plucked the fruit while I begged him not to. He ate one. Just one. The glow took him apart from the inside. She voice breaks on the word, but she swallows hard, pushing forward. "That day, I left the orchard. I never touched another pie, but I see them still, every night in my dreams, glowing, whispering, reminding me what kindness costs when ignored." Silence hangs heavy in the clearing. The gnomes bow their heads. Even the lanterns seem to dim, swaying as though in mourning. You shift uncomfortably, the warmth in your chest from earlier bites now edged with unease. "So, the gnomes only sell to the kind because the orchard itself demands it?" The woman nods. "Not demand, enforce. Cruelty poisons the roots, and the roots spit it back. They can't change that law any more than they can change the rising moon." Her cloudy eyes fix on you again. "You've eaten. Tell me, what did you taste? Sweet or bitter?" The memory of voices returns, whispers twining through your mind. The thank you, faint and trembling, tucked in your bones. You nod slowly. "Sweet." For the first time the woman smiles, small, weary, but real. "Then you might walk out of here alive." The gnomes hum approval, their beards wagging like cattails in wind. One lifts a pie, sets it gently on the table beside the woman. She doesn't touch it, only regards it with a sorrow you can't quite read. You understand now. Every bite isn't just food, it's history. And the forest never forgets who poisons it.
The old woman's story lingers in the air like smoke, but the gnomes aren't done showing you. The bearded one hops off his stool, brushing moss from his tunic. "Enough words," he says. "Time you saw the berries themselves. Come." He leads you past the glowing tables, deeper into the clearing, where the trees crowd tighter. The lanterns here are fewer, but the light doesn't fade. It sharpens. Ahead, you glimpse clusters of fruit dangling from branches, and your stomach knots instantly. The orchard is smaller than you expected, just a patch of gnarled trees twisting together like they've been braided by hand. But their branches are heavy, drooping under fruit that shines with an inner pulse. Some glow soft gold, others silver white. But tucked among them, you see darker ones. Berries swollen black, dripping juice that hisses when it hits the moss. The gnome halts at the threshold. There, berries of betrayal. You step closer. The air here feels different, thicker, as though the orchard has been breathing while holding a grudge. The sweet smell of ripe fruit is cut with something acrid, sharp as iron. One berry drops as you watch, splitting open against the ground. Its juice seeps across the moss like spilled ink, and the whispers rush into your head again. This time they're not soft. He lied to me, stole what was mine, left me behind. The voices claw at you, bitter, jagged, echoing with spite. You wince, clutching your temples. The gnome doesn't move to help. He simply gestures at the blackened fruit. These grew in the years of greed. When cruelty was louder than kindness, the orchard drank poison. Some roots never forgot. Every season they bear new betrayal. You force your eyes open. The dark berries throb faintly, their glow sickly violet. One pulse lines up perfectly with the hammer of your heartbeat. What happens if you manage through clenched teeth, if someone eats one? The gnome's lips curled grimly. What you saw with the rude man earlier, that was mercy compared to these. To prove his point, he nudges a berry loose with his spoon. It splats on the ground. A beetle crawls toward it, antennae twitching. The instant it touches the juice, its shell splits. The insect crumbles into ash. You stagger back, throat tight. The gnome nods. The orchard punishes greed, but it never wastes. Even betrayal has its place. We mix those berries into crust for the cruel-hearted who try to trick us. The pie finds them out. Your stomach twists at the thought. You bake poison? He chuckles. Not poison, justice. They bake themselves. We just light the oven. You can't tear your eyes from the branches. The gold berries glow softly, almost inviting, while the dark ones pulse with slow, malevolent rhythm. Two halves of the same orchard, growing side by side, roots tangled deep below. The gnome steps closer, lowering his voice. Do you see now why we guard them, why we only sell to kindness? Every pie carries both sweet and bitter, but only the kind taste the gold, the cruel taste nothing but black. You nod slowly, though the whispers of betrayal still scrape at the back of your skull. One berry falls, rolling to your boot. You freeze, every nerve on edge. Its glow flickers faintly, neither golden nor black, but something in between, dull red, like cooling embers. The gnome frowns, stooping to pick it up. He turns it in his palm, beard twitching. Rare. Memory undecided. Could sweeten, could sour. He pockets it in a pouch at his belt without another word. You want to ask more, but the orchard's air presses heavier, thick enough to make your chest ache. The gnome notices and claps you on the thigh. That's enough for one night. Too long here, and even the kind start tasting bitterness. You stumble back with him toward the clearing. Only once the orchard's glow fades behind you does your breath come easier. But the voices don't fade entirely. Somewhere in your head, one harsh whisper still loops. He left me behind. He left me behind, like a burr caught in cloth. Back in the clearing, the pies cool in neat rows, steam curling like gentle smoke signals. You expect the gnomes to settle back into their usual rhythm, dusting, stirring, humming. Instead, they part like reeds in water, leaving a path that leads straight toward a hollow tree at the far edge. The bearded gnome gestures with his spoon. "You've seen the berries. Now you'll see the fire." You hesitate. "The oven?" He nods, eyes glinting. "The oven that breathes. No pie is crust without it." The Holland tree looms ahead, its bark split wide as though struck by lightning centuries ago. You duck through the opening, shoulders brushing against damp wood, and step into a chamber that shouldn't exist. The air hits you first, hot, dry, sharp. It smells like ash and cinnamon, like something sacred burning. In the center sits the oven, a squat thing of stone and root, its mouth glowing red. But it's alive. You can hear it. Each embered breath sighs in and out like a sleeping beast. The gnome steps proudly to its side. "Our oldest ally, our harshest judge." You stare, uneasy. The oven's light pulses as though acknowledging your presence. You could swear its flames lean toward you, sniffing, testing. "Don't be shy," the gnome grins. "It already knows you're here." You take a step closer. Heat licks your skin, not scorching, but intimate. Then a sound, low and guttural, not crackle, but rumble. The oven exhales. Ash stirs across the floor in patterns that almost form words. The gnome tilts his head, listening. It asks if you've lied since entering. Your mouth dries. You think back, your answers, your hesitation, the things you didn't say. Have omissions counted as lies? You don't know, but the oven waits, its glow deepening. "No," you whisper. The oven exhales again, this time softer. Sparks drift upward, green gold, harmless. The gnome chuckles. "Good, for now." He sets a pan of dough on the stone lip. The oven inhales. Flames curl, licking the crust without burning. You watch as the dough rises in seconds, puffing golden, shimmering faintly. The whispers you've grown used to return, faint but clear. Laughter, sighs, fragments of memory, baked into the crust as though the oven itself is sealing them. The gnome lifts the pie free and offers it to you. Warm, isn't it? Because the oven chose to warm it for you. You hesitate, half expecting it to flare and scorch your hand. But when you take it, the crust radiates comfort, like holding sunlight in your palms. The gnome's grin softens, almost fond. It doesn't always oblige. Cruelty touches dough like rot. If the oven smells it, the crust won't rise. Or worse, it rises into something you wouldn't dare eat. He gestures toward a blackened pan shoved in the corner. You glance and immediately regret it. The crust there has bubbled wrong, twisted into something sharp-edged, steaming with a smell like burnt hair. The gnome's eyes twinkle. That was a thief's. He thought he could steal a pie without asking. The oven baked him his own greed. He didn't last long after the first bite. The oven rumbles again, louder this time. The gnome pats its side affectionately, like one might soothe a restless dog. It says you're not finished. You've still got trials to face, but it doesn't hate you yet. You let out a shaky laugh. That's comforting. The gnome snorts. It should be. Few ovens are so polite. The flames shift once more,
glowing brighter, then dimming back to embers. The oven exhales, almost like a sigh, and the chamber feels cooler, calmer. The gnome straightens. You've seen the roots, the berries, the fire. You're halfway to understanding. But remember this, the pies are not ours alone. They belong to the orchard, the oven, and the memories you bring with you. Break their balance, and you'll bake your own undoing. He waves you back toward the hollow's entrance. The oven's breath follows you out, warm on your neck until you step into the cooler night air again. Only once you're back under the lanterns do you realize your hands still tingle with heat, as though the oven left its mark on you.
The oven's breath still lingers on your skin as you step back into the clearing. The gnomes scatter to their stations, pretending to busy themselves. But you notice how they glance at you sideways, as if the oven has marked you, and they're waiting to see whether the mark glows or festers. You open your mouth to ask what's next, but before the words come, a rustling cuts through the night. Something moves just beyond the lantern line, quick and light-footed. At first, you expect another traveler, but what slips into view is lower to the ground, with a tail like a brush of flame. A fox. It pads silently into the circle of light, fur catching every glimmer. Its eyes shine unnervingly bright, too knowing for an ordinary animal. The gnomes don't panic. They simply mutter among themselves, a few even bowing their heads. The fox sits a few feet from you, curling its tail around its paws. Then it speaks, clear, smooth, voice edged with amusement. "So, the oven didn't spit you out. That's rare. You nearly choke on air. You talk?" The fox yawns, flashing sharp teeth. "Yes, and you state the obvious. Don't worry, you'll get used to me." The bearded gnome mutters, "Tricktail, you always arrive when the orchard whispers loudest." The fox flicks an ear. "Better me than some desperate traveler with sticky fingers." Then its gaze pins you. "You've been shown the rules, haven't you? Kindness sweetens, cruelty sours. Simple enough. And yet," the fox tilts its head, "humans never manage simple." You swallow, uneasy. "I'm not planning to cheat anyone." The fox chuckles, low and knowing. "Oh, I've heard that tune before. Travelers swear they only want a taste, a bite for the road. But then they grow bold, they demand, they steal, they lie. And when the crust burns their tongues, they wail as if they were wronged. Hilarious, really." One of the smaller gnomes bristles. "It isn't funny when the orchard bleeds for their greed." The fox's grin widens. "Ah, but it is, because fools always think they're cleverer than the roots. Always." Its tail sweeps across the moss like a painter's brush. "And you, where do you fall? Are you the fool who thinks himself kind, or the kind one who will be tested until he breaks?" You start to answer, but the fox interrupts with a bark of laughter. "Don't bother. You won't know until you're hungry enough to lie." The gnomes exchange uneasy glances. The bearded one clears his throat. "Fox, stop needling him. He's passed each step so far." "Passed," the fox repeats, mocking. "So far." Then it turns back to you, eyes narrowing. "Consider this a warning. The orchard doesn't play favorites. You may think kindness is easy now, when pies are handed to you, when lanterns glow bright. But wait. Wait until the path is darker, until something precious dangles just out of reach. That's when greed whispers the loudest. Its voice softens, almost friendly. And I'll be there, watching, because nothing amuses me more than a traveler deciding whether to feed their belly or their conscience. You exhale slowly, trying to steady yourself. And if I choose wrong? The fox's smile widens, too many teeth gleaming. Then you won't need to worry about walking out of this forest at all. Silence hangs. Even the gnomes don't speak. The fox rises gracefully, tail flicking once. It steps back toward the trees, pausing at the lantern edge. Kindness buys pies. Cruelty buys coffins. Remember that, traveler. Its voice lingers like smoke, then it slips into the dark, vanishing without sound. The bearded gnome shakes his head. Ignore Tricktail. He enjoys scaring guests. But you can't ignore it. The fox's words echo in your skull louder than the oven's breath. You won't know until you're hungry enough to lie.
The fox's warning lingers, curling in your thoughts like smoke you can't wave away. The gnomes, however, act as though nothing unusual has happened. They go back to polishing lanterns, brushing crumbs from tablecloths, setting out pies that shimmer faintly in the night air. Only the bearded one stays near, watching you with an expression that isn't quite suspicion, but it isn't trust either. Finally, he taps his spoon against a wooden bench. Enough observing, enough tasting. You want to know why the pies belong only to the kind? Then you'll prove it. Your stomach clenches. Prove it how? He grins, the wrinkles around his eyes tightening. With a test, a simple trial. We call it the kindness test. Fail, and you'll leave with nothing but your own echo following you. Pass, and you may earn more than a slice. You try to laugh it off. That sounds like a game show. The gnome squints. What's a game show? Never mind. He whistles sharp and high. Instantly, half a dozen gnomes bustle about, clearing space in the clearing. They drag away tables, roll up mossy rugs, shoo lanterns higher into the branches, until you stand in a circle of light like an improvised stage. You're suddenly very aware of your own awkward stance, as though the entire forest is waiting to see how you'll trip. The bearded gnome raises his spoon. The rules are simple. We set a task, you respond without trickery, without selfishness. No shortcuts. Every choice you make is weighed by more than eyes. As if on cue, fireflies stir from the trees, drifting overhead. Their glow gathers in a halo above, and you remember how earlier whispers curled inside your skull. Now the forest itself seems to lean forward, eager. You force a shaky grin. What's the task? The gnome points toward the far side of the clearing. A young gnome, barely waist-high, struggles to drag a crate twice his size. The wood creaks, his tiny hands slip, he stumbles, grunting with the effort. The bearded one doesn't look at you, just says, "Help him." You blink. That's it? That's it. It feels absurd. After the oven that breathed, the orchard that whispered curses, the fox that spoke warnings, you expected something impossible, some riddle, some deadly challenge. But this? Carrying a box? You step forward, kneel beside the smaller gnome, and grip the crate. Together, you lift. At first it's simple, heavy but manageable. Yet as you carry it across the clearing, the box grows heavier. Your arms ache, sweat prickles at your back. You glance down, the little gnome is straining too, but he doesn't complain, doesn't slow. Halfway, you realize the weight isn't just wood. The whispers return, faint, taunting. Too much for you. Why bother helping? Drop it, save yourself. The crate pulls harder, sinking like an anchor. The gnome beside you stumbles, and for a split second you think about letting go, letting him bear the weight alone. But you don't. You grit your teeth, adjust your grip, and mutter, "I've carried worse things after bad takeout." The little gnome shoots you a puzzled look, but doesn't ask. He just nods, determination etched on his small face. Step by step, you drag the crate to the far end. By the time you lower it, your arms tremble, muscles burning. You slump onto the moss, gasping. The whispers vanish. The weight lifts not just from your arms, but from your chest. Above, the fireflies shimmer brighter, swirling like sparks of approval. The bearded gnome approaches, eyes glittering. Not bad. Not perfect, but not bad. You frown. What do you mean, not perfect? I did it, didn't I? He shrugs. You considered dropping it. Kindness isn't in the action alone, it's in the thought. But you fought the thought, and that matters. You stare, too exhausted to argue. The fireflies circle once, then scatter into the trees. The bearded gnome leans close, lowering his voice. The test is never about the crate. It's about the weight of temptation. Now you know how heavy selfishness feels. And you do. Your arms may ache, but the heavier part was the whisper of betrayal you nearly obeyed.
The clearing is still buzzing with the firefly's glow when the little gnome wipes his brow and gives you a shy nod of thanks. The crate sits steady at the far edge, as though it never strained your body near to breaking. You flex your arms, half expecting them to still buckle under invisible weight, but the burden has dissolved like a dream. Overhead, the fireflies don't drift away completely. They hang in loose patterns, glowing brighter whenever your eyes catch them. They hover like a gallery of floating lanterns, except these ones have wings, and you realize with a shiver that they're not just lighting the trial, they're recording it. "Don't look so rattled," the bearded gnome says, spoon tapping lazily against his palm. "They're only witnesses, memory keepers. What they've seen, they keep, forever." "Forever?" you echo, craning your neck at the swarm. "Forever," he repeats, lips curling. "They followed you through the crate trial. Every doubt, every step, every sweat drop. Don't think a single muttered word escaped them." As if to prove his point, the swarm flickers suddenly. Images ghost across their glow, faint as fog. You stumbling, you hesitating, you fighting the urge to let go. The tiny gnome's struggling form flashes beside yours. The whole ordeal plays across the night sky like a stuttering film reel, then blinks away. Your throat tightens. "So, I'm on camera?" "Camera?" one of the smaller gnomes pipes up. "Never mind," you mutter, cheeks warm. The fireflies swirl lower, a cloud of light pressing close. Their hum is faint, like many tiny violins tuning at once. The swarm splits into strands, weaving around you, encircling you in a shifting halo. You stand frozen as they pulse rhythmically, bright, dim, bright, like they're asking silent questions you can't translate. The bearded gnome watches with solemn pride. They weigh the truth of what's in you. If you cheat, they blaze white-hot, brighter than the sun. If you lie, they scatter into darkness. But if you hold steady, they linger, like they do now. The swarm hums louder, then suddenly bursts upward, forming a spiral above the clearing. The air feels charged, almost electric. Sparks cascade down, tickling your skin like static. The little gnome who shared the crate with you steps forward, cheeks still flushed with effort. "They like you," he says softly, as if confessing a secret. "They don't often like outsiders." I manage a weak smile. "Good to know I'm not completely failing." But even as you say it, the swarm shifts again, patterns rippling through the lights like Morse code from some higher power. The bearded gnome tilts his head, listening. "They're not finished," he murmurs. "They ask for more." Your gut drops. "More what? I just carried a crate that nearly turned into a black hole." He gestures toward the far side of the circle, where two gnomes are setting up something that looks suspiciously like a rickety bridge made of planks lashed with vines. Beyond it yawns a shadowy gully you swear wasn't there minutes ago. "Another test," he says simply. "The fireflies demand it." You blink at the makeshift bridge, creaking in the breeze. "That thing looks like it couldn't hold a squirrel." The gnome shrugs. "Then tread lightly." The fireflies press lower, crowding around the bridge, their glow outlining each weak plank. You hear their hum rising in tempo, urging you forward. You step to the edge, peering down into the gully. It isn't bottomless, but deep enough that a fall would break bones or pride. The planks sway and the vines groan in protest. The gnome gestures with his spoon. Across, then back. No dropping, no shortcuts. The swarm will know. You glance at the fireflies. They circle tighter, forming a glowing path across the bridge, like runway lights daring you to follow. Your foot lands on the first plank. It creaks. The swarm hums. You breathe in, step again. Each movement is painfully slow, measured, as though the fireflies judge the angle of your toes. Halfway across, the whispers return, low, taunting, oily. Why risk yourself for gnomes? Nobody would blame you if you stopped. They'd still call you kind. Your heart hammers. The bridge lurches as a plank snaps behind you, dropping into the gully with a clatter. The swarm flares white gold, humming louder, almost scolding you for faltering. You grit your teeth and mutter under your breath, "Fine, fine, you glowing tattletales, I'm not quitting." The fireflies brighten as if amused. You shuffle forward, sweat slicking your palms, until your foot touches solid ground on the far side. A rush of light bursts around you, the swarm exploding in a whirl of joy. Then, mercilessly, they guide you back. By the time you step onto moss again, chest heaving, the fireflies scatter upward, dissolving into the treetops. For a brief, dizzy moment, you miss their glow. The bearded gnome smirks. They'll remember you now. Every stumble, every curse you muttered. The orchard holds no secrets when fireflies are near. You collapse onto the moss, panting. So, basically, I just failed in high definition. Or, he says, spoon tapping once, you just passed in honesty.
You're still sprawled on the moss when the bearded gnome claps his hands, the sharp sound breaking through your ragged breaths. "Enough resting," he says. "The orchard stirs. You've passed the swarm's measure, but passing once means nothing unless you can hold your kindness where shadows reach." The words barely settle before a low rustling rolls through the clearing. The gnomes all pause, their round ears twitching. You sit upright, senses alert. The fireflies are gone, but their absence feels less like silence and more like a held breath. From the tree line movement emerges, shapes, tall and thin, slipping between trunks. At first you think they're more gnomes, but as they step into the lantern glow, your stomach knots. They aren't gnomes. They're human-shaped, but off. Too pale, too sharp, as though carved from old wood and forgotten in damp earth. Their eyes are hollow sockets that glow faintly green, and moss grows in patches across their shoulders. The little gnome gasps, "The sour ones!" The bearded gnome grips his spoon tighter, grim. Travelers who failed their tests. Those who tried to trick kindness or twist it. The orchard kept their shells. One of the figures steps forward, mouth opening in a creak. The sound is wrong, like branches rubbing together in a storm. When words finally drag out, they scrape the air. "Give us pie." Your skin prickles. They smell of rot, not pastry. Their movements are stiff, jerky, but relentless as they shuffle closer. You whisper, "They want your food?" "They want everything," the bearded gnome replies. "But no kindness lives in them now, only hunger. Watch closely. This is what greed tastes like when it's done chewing." The sour ones stretch their arms, fingers like brittle twigs snapping. Their voices rise in a chorus, "Pie, pie, pie." Gnomes scurry to form a line, spoons and ladles raised like swords. The bearded one points his spoon at you. "Stay behind us. You're no match for them." But the sour ones aren't watching the gnomes. Their hollow eyes have locked onto you.
You feel the weight of that stare, cold and heavy. It's as though they smell something on you, some spark of choice, some morsel of kindness they can't have. The first lurches forward, brittle legs cracking. The gnomes rush to meet it, spoons flashing. You expect laughter at the absurdity of utensils in battle, but the spoons strike true, ringing like iron. Sparks fly where metal touches moss flesh, and the sour one shrieks, collapsing into dust. Another surges forward, arms sweeping wide. A gnome ducks under the swing, tripping it with a ladle handle. They move fast, coordinated, like they fought this battle before. Still more emerge from the trees, half a dozen. The clearing fills with the smell of damp rot and sour breath. You stumble backward, heart pounding. One breaks through the gnome line, heading straight for you. Its mouth opens wide, wider than bones should allow, a cavern of green light. You freeze. Then instinct kicks in. Your hand snatches up the nearest thing, a rolling pin. You swing it clumsily, connecting with its head. The crack is sickening, wood against wood, and the creature stumbles back, screeching. The bearded gnome glances over. Ha! Perhaps you're not entirely useless. I'm very useless, but I'm motivated, you shout, dodging another swipe. The fight blurs. The gnomes dart, spoons clang, sour ones collapse into heaps of moss and dust. But they keep coming, dragging themselves out of the tree line. Each time one falls, two more replace it. At last, the bearded gnome whistles sharp. The gnomes rally, forming a circle. He slams his spoon into the moss. The ground trembles, faint at first, then harder. From beneath the clearing, vines erupt, snaking upward, wrapping the sour ones. The creatures thrash, shriek, but the vines tighten, dragging them back toward the earth. One locks eyes with you as it sinks, its mouth shaping a single rasped word, hungry. Then it's gone, swallowed by soil. Silence follows, heavy, broken only by the gnome's panting. The little gnome whispers, "They always return." The bearded one nods grimly, "They always will, as long as there are travelers who think kindness is a mask to wear, not a meal to share." He looks at you, eyes sharp. "Now you've seen why pies are only for the kind." Your rolling pin slips from your grasp, thudding onto moss. You don't say anything. You can't. The image of those hollow eyes, hungry, endless, burns itself into your mind. The clearing still trembles from the vine's retreat, when the gnomes return to their places, brushing moss and dust from their tunics. The bearded one leans heavily on his spoon, his shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Around you, the lanterns flicker uneasily, their light dimmed as if afraid of the lingering shadows. You swallow hard. So those things, those sour ones, they were travelers? Actual people? The bearded gnome doesn't answer immediately. He studies the soil where the last creature vanished, the ground still mottled with dampness. At last, he sighs. Once, yes. They entered the orchard with smiles, with laughter, with words that sounded kind, but weren't meant. The orchard hears what we don't. It tastes the bitterness under the tongue. When kindness is faked, it rots, and rot does not die, it grows. The words sit heavy in your chest. You imagine faces, human faces, warped into those hollow-eyed husks, travelers who thought kindness was just a password at a gate, and now they wander forever, snarling for pies they can't eat. The little gnome approaches timidly, holding a lantern whose flame wobbles like jelly. They remember hunger, but not warmth. They remember want, but not giving. That's why they always ask for pies. They can't forget what sweetness feels like, even though they never truly tasted it. Your stomach twists. For once, you don't crack a joke. The bearded gnome notices. His tone softens, just slightly. Now you see why we guard our pies. The sweetness isn't just flour and sugar. It's trust, patience, generosity. Give it to the wrong mouths, and the orchard itself sours. That's what you fought just now. He motions for you to rise. You follow, still shaky. The gnomes reform into their neat little clusters, setting down spoons, relighting lanterns, brushing moss from benches. It looks almost normal again, like the battle never happened. But the air hasn't settled. The forest hums low, restless, like it knows another shoe or spoon will drop. The bearded gnome clears his throat. There's more you need to understand. Words and trials are one thing, but there's another piece, a deeper layer. He leans closer, lowering his voice as though even the trees might eavesdrop. Kindness, when it isn't tested, is only decoration. It shines, but it doesn't root. To see if it roots, we must pull you deeper. Deeper, you ask, not liking the word? Into the orchard's heart, he says simply. The little gnome's eyes widen. But quiet, the bearded one snaps, though not unkindly. The forest chose. The sour ones came sniffing after this one. That means the orchard demands truth. We don't question truth. We walk it. Before you can protest, the gnomes start moving again, gathering lanterns, forming lines. The little gnome hesitates, then trots to your side, tugging gently at your sleeve. Stay close. The orchard's heart doesn't show the same face twice. Great. That's not ominous at all. You follow them out of the clearing, feet crunching moss that feels softer now, almost like it's pulling you in. Lanterns sway, throwing circles of light that jitter like nervous eyes. The path twists tighter than before, branches weaving low. The air grows damp, earthy, smelling of roots and old rain. You hear water trickling somewhere, but it's faint, muffled, like it's flowing inside walls rather than open streams. The gnomes don't speak. Even the bearded one is quiet, spoon tucked under his arm. Only the little gnome whispers now and then, pointing out strange things you'd rather not notice. Mushrooms that pulse faintly, knots in trees shaped like faces, sap that drips thicker than blood. Finally, the path opens. You stop dead. You've entered a hollow glade, and in the middle rises a tree so wide it dwarfs every building you've ever seen. Its trunk is split, not cracked, but deliberately parted, like a giant door left ajar. The split glows faintly from within, golden light spilling out like molten honey. The gnomes lower their lanterns in unison. The bearded one looks at you. There lies the orchard's heart. It does not welcome all. If it accepts you, you'll step inside and walk with no harm. If it rejects you, his spoon wraps the moss, then you'll know why pies are only for the kind. I stare at the glowing gap, and if I just don't go in? The bearded one raises his eyebrow. Then you'll walk away, and the sour ones will follow your scent forever. Fantastic, trapped between golden doom and moss zombies. The little gnome squeezes your sleeve again. Remember the crate, remember the bridge. Just keep holding kindness, even if it shakes. Your throat is dry, your palms slick. Still, you step forward. The glow spills across your face, warm but blinding. It smells faintly of sugar and apples, and something else, something sharp beneath the sweetness, like steel hidden in frosting. As you press your hand against the bark, The tree thrums under your palm, alive. The gap shivers wider, light spilling bright, and before you can change your mind, the tree swallows you whole.
The bark folds shut behind you, and suddenly the forest is gone. You stand in a chamber that feels both enormous and impossibly close, as though the walls are made of breath instead of wood. Light pours from the grain of the tree itself, threads of gold winding through the bark like veins. The air is thick with the smell of baked apples and cinnamon, but it's sharper here, almost dizzying, as if sweetness itself could cut. Your footsteps echo faintly on the floor, though there's no stone beneath you, only polished root, curling and twisting like frozen waves. You glance back at where you entered, but the split has sealed, seamless, no hint of a door. "Cool," you mutter, voice too loud in the glowing silence, trapped in a giant pie-flavored lung. The little gnome slips in beside you. Apparently the trees swallow him too. His lantern sputters, dim compared to the walls. "Don't joke here," he whispers. "The heart listens." "Yeah, well, it's going to get sarcasm whether it likes it or not," you whisper back. Ahead, the bearded gnome appears, as though he's always been here. He gestures you forward with a solemn nod. "Step carefully. The orchard is alive in this place. It remembers. It decides." You walk. Each step feels heavier, not in your legs, but in your chest, as though the air itself weighs something. The glowing veins pulse faintly, in rhythm with your heartbeat, or perhaps the other way around. The path narrows until you're funneled into a smaller chamber. At the center rises a pedestal of root, and resting on it is a pie. Of course it's a pie. It looks ordinary at first. Golden crust, sugared top, a faint curl of steam as though freshly baked. But the longer you stare, the less ordinary it feels. The crust shimmers faintly like heat haze. The steam curls upward, not randomly, but in shapes, spirals, patterns, fleeting faces. And the smell, it's every comfort you've ever known, every late-night snack, every kitchen memory, every sweetness you ever craved. Your stomach growls loudly. The bearded gnome folds his arms. This is the orchard's gift, or its trap. Depends on you. You blink. "Let me guess, I'm supposed to eat it?" His eyes glint. "Not yet. First, listen." The pie hums. A faint vibration, not in your ears, but in your bones. Then a voice, soft, coaxing, rising directly from the steam. "You are tired. You are hungry. Take. No one need know. Just one bite. Only you." Your throat tightens. You glance at the gnomes, but they remain silent, watching. The little one's face is anxious, the bearded one's unreadable. The pie's voice slides smoother, silkier. Why share? They test you, burden you, make you carry crates and cross bridges and fight shadows. What did they give you in return? Nothing but sweat, nothing but fear. This is yours, yours alone. Your hand twitches at your side. You picture lifting it, feeling that crust crack under your fingers, tasting. Just one bite. What's the harm? But then you remember the sour ones, hollow eyes, empty hunger. The bearded gnome's words echo, kindness isn't in the action alone, it's in the thought. You swallow hard and force a laugh. Wow, a pie that tries to gaslight me. That's new. The voice sharpens, suddenly cold. Mock me, but you want me. You always will. The bearded gnome finally speaks. What will you do? Your mouth is dry. The temptation sits heavy, stronger than hunger. This isn't just food. It's every selfish thought you've ever hidden, dressed in sugar. You take a step closer, another. The pie's steam curls eagerly toward you, wrapping like fingers. Your hand rises, trembling. The little gnome whispers, "Remember the crate. Remember the bridge." You stop. Your hand hovers inches from the crust. The warmth radiates against your skin, impossibly inviting. But you curl your fingers into a fist and pull back. "No, I'm not eating you. Not if it means turning into one of those sour tree zombies." The pie steam twists violently, faces snarling, then fades with a hiss. The glow from the roots brightens, washing the chamber in gold. The bearded gnome nods once, approving. Better than most. You exhale shakily. "So, was that the test?" He smiles faintly. "The first of them." "Of course, because nothing's ever simple here."
The golden glow softens after your refusal, though it doesn't vanish entirely. It lingers, like an approving nod from the tree itself. The pie remains on the pedestal, steam faint but steady, as though waiting to see if you'll change your mind. You take a careful step back. "Okay, didn't eat the cursed pie. Do I get a sticker? Maybe a t-shirt that says, 'I resisted baked temptation in a giant tree.'" The bearded gnome's mouth twitches, almost a smile. "You get to keep walking." That's less exciting. The little gnome grabs your hand suddenly. His lantern sputters brighter, as though fueled by nerves. "It isn't finished. The orchard never tests once. It tests until you forget you're being tested." That's not comforting. The bearded gnome gestures forward. The root path stretches into another corridor, narrower than before. The walls shimmer with that honey light, but now there are shapes inside the glow, shadows moving within the veins of wood. You squint, uneasy. As you move, the air thickens again, the sweetness turning cloying, like breathing frosting. Your head swims, but you push on, feet dragging against the polished root floor. Then you hear it. Voices. At first faint, like echoes from another room, then louder, clearer, and with a jolt you recognize them. They're yours. Fragments of your own voice, plucked from memories you thought private, bounce around the glowing corridor. Words you've muttered under your breath, things you've said when no one was around. "Why should I help? No one helps me. I'll just take the easy way this once. I don't care, it's not my problem." You freeze. Your stomach twists, far worse than hunger. Those weren't lies. They're yours, ugly truths you'd tried to bury. The little gnome squeezes your hand tighter. "Don't stop. That's not who you are now." The corridor seems to disagree. The walls ripple, and faces form in the golden glow. Your faces. Dozens of them, each one sneering, mocking, repeating those selfish phrases louder and louder. You try to look away, but every direction holds another version of you, mouths warped into cruel smirks. "Shut up," you mutter. "I don't sound like that." "But you do," one sneers, voice perfectly your own. "You think a few kind acts erase years of selfishness? You're not kind, you're desperate, you're pretending." The words hit hard, like blows. Your chest tightens, shame prickling your skin. The voices overlap, a chorus of your worst moments. The bearded gnome's voice cuts through, stern. "What will you do? Deny them, attack them, or face them?" You glare at the faces, fists trembling. Every instinct screams to punch the glowing wall, to silence the echoes, but you know that's not the test. So you force yourself to stand still. You let the words crash over you, ugly and true. Your jaw clenches, your eyes sting,
but you breathe. Finally, you say, "Yeah, I said those things. I thought them. I'm not proud, but they're mine. They don't own me anymore." The voices falter. Some flicker out. The faces ripple uncertainly. You push harder, louder now, though your voice shakes. "I've been selfish. I've been lazy. But I'm not that person right now. I carried the crate. I crossed the bridge. I didn't eat your creepy soul pie. So, shut up." Silence. The faces melt, fading back into the golden glow. The corridor brightens, warm instead of suffocating. The air clears, less sugar-thick. You sag in relief, knees weak. The bearded gnome studies you, then nods once. Better still. The little gnome beams, his lantern flaring happily. "See, roots are stronger when you admit where they cracked." You laugh shakily. Glad my existential therapy session pleased the tree. But even as you joke, a truth gnaws inside. Those selfish words were real. You'll carry them, even if the orchard forgave you. You keep walking. The corridor bends, opening into a new chamber. This one is vast, domed, with roots arching overhead like a cathedral ceiling. At the center stands another pedestal. But this time, no pie waits. Instead, a mirror, tall, framed in twisting branches, its surface rippling faintly as though it reflects water, not glass. You swallow. You already know what's coming. The mirror looms in the center of the root chamber, taller than you, its surface wavering like it's unsure whether to be glass or liquid. The roots holding it twist like ribs, curling protectively around it. The air here is still, heavy with expectation. The little gnome edges closer, lantern trembling in his small hand. "This is the last of it," he whispers, "the orchard's sharpest blade." You eye the mirror. "Let me guess, it shows my worst haircut from high school?" He doesn't laugh. That's how you know it's bad. The bearded gnome approaches, resting both hands on the rim of his spoon. His eyes gleam in the golden light. "The orchard doesn't show lies. It doesn't show shadows of what was. It shows exactly who you are, right now, without mask or excuse. Stand before it." "Fantastic," you mutter. "Can't wait to meet the unfiltered version of myself. Probably tired, probably needs caffeine." Still, your feet carry you forward. The closer you get, the more the mirror shimmers as though sensing you. The surface steadies when you stop directly before it. At first, you see yourself, sweaty, dirt-smeared, hair a mess. You look like someone who got lost in a forest and picked the wrong Airbnb. But then the reflection blinks, and doesn't blink with you. The figure in the mirror straightens, cleaner, sharper. Same face, but not weighed by exhaustion. Its eyes burn, clear and confident. It smiles, not warm, but knowing. "Well," it says, voice perfectly your own, but smoother. "Here we are." You jolt. "You talk?" "I talk because you think I do. You're in my orchard, after all." "Pretty sure it's their orchard," you nod, toward the gnomes. The reflection chuckles. "Is it? Or is it yours? Every choice you've made here, every refusal, every step, they're yours. Maybe the orchard just wanted to prove that to you." Your throat tightens. "And what, you're supposed to be my better self?" The figure tilts its head. "Better? No. Truer. I'm you without excuses, without sarcasm." It smirks faintly. "Though you can't help yourself, can you?" You bristle. Sarcasm's my coping mechanism. Exactly. Cope, deflect, dodge. You hide kindness under jokes so you won't look weak. But kindness isn't weakness, it's choice. And you've avoided choosing it for most of your life. The words sting because they're true. You glance away, but the reflection leans, demanding your gaze. You want the pies? Not to eat, oh no. To prove you belong, to prove you're one of the kind ones. But if you have to prove it, do you really live it? Your jaw tightens. I carried the crate. I crossed the bridge. I said no to the damn magic pie. Doesn't that count? The reflection softens, just slightly. It counts. It shows you're trying. And maybe trying is enough. But don't fool yourself. You'll leave this orchard, and the real test begins out there. No gnomes watching, no glowing roots, just you and the choice to be kind when it costs you something. The chamber feels smaller suddenly, the golden glow pressing in. You whisper, "So what now?" The reflection gestures at the frame. Now you step through. Your stomach lurches. Through you? It nods. Through yourself. The orchard doesn't keep copies. Only the whole leaves. Behind you, the little gnome murmurs. If you step back, the mirror closes. You'll walk free, but without pies, without blessing, with sour ones at your heels. The bearded gnome adds quietly, "The orchard never forces, it only offers." The mirror waits. Your reflection stands still, patient, hand extended toward you. You hesitate. Every instinct screams not to trust it. But the orchard isn't about instinct. It's about choice. So you raise your hand. You touch the surface. It ripples, warm, pulling you in. For an instant, you feel split. Every selfish thought, every kind act, every version of yourself tearing apart, then slamming together. Whole. You stumble forward, out the other side of the mirror. Still you, but heavier and lighter all at once. The mirror dissolves into golden dust. The bearded gnome's voice fills the silence. The orchard accepts you.
The chamber exhales, as though the tree itself has been holding its breath. The golden glow fades from blazing brilliance to a warm emberlight, soft and steady. Roots above uncurl, stretching with creaks like old bones. The pedestal where the pie once steamed is bare now. The mirror is gone too. No more reflections, no more whispers, just a wide, cleared space that feels waiting. The bearded gnome plants the butt of his spoon on the floor and leans on it, studying you. His eyes, dark as earth, glint in the dim glow. The orchard tested you. You didn't fail. That's more than most. Not exactly a glowing Yelp review, you say, your voice rasping. Would have preferred a 5-star rating with complimentary breakfast. The little gnome lets out a shaky laugh, gripping his lantern tight. Breakfast is coming, the good kind. Your stomach growls on cue, which feels both humiliating and perfectly timed. From the far wall, a seam opens in the roots, slow, deliberate, like the tree is peeling back its skin. Beyond lies a staircase spiraling upward, each step woven from braided bark and moss. A faint glow beckons from above. The bearded gnome gestures. Climb. The orchard's gift waits. Right, you mutter, because climbing a staircase made of tree innards is the least suspicious thing I've done today. Still, your legs move. The steps creak but hold, springy underfoot, almost pulsing like they're alive. The little gnome scurries ahead, lantern bouncing, while the elder follows behind, spoon tapping steadily against the roots. The air changes as you climb, less sugar-thick, more fresh, like biting into an apple straight from the branch. Cool breezes brush your skin, carrying faint laughter, soft, kind, not mocking. The scent of pies grows stronger again, but gentler this time, less like a trap and more like an invitation. Finally, you reach the top. The staircase unfurls into a vast hollow chamber at the crown of the tree. It feels endless, the ceiling lost in shadow, but lantern-like fruit dangle from branches, casting golden light. Dozens of gnomes bustle here, tending ovens carved directly into the living wood, smoke curling upward through cracks that release it to the night sky. Tables stretch in every direction, loaded with pies of every kind, steaming apple, spiced pumpkin, dark berry glistening with glaze, pecan glossy as amber. The air hums with warmth, laughter, clinking dishes. You stop dead, jaw slack. It's a bakery rave. The little gnome grins up at you, lantern forgotten in his hand. Welcome to the orchard's hearth. A gnome wearing a flour-dusted apron notices you and bustles over, carrying a pie balanced on each hand and one on his head like it's nothing. He eyes you critically, then sniffs. Tall one past the roots? Still breathing? Didn't turn sour? The bearded gnome nods once. The orchard accepted them. A ripple of murmurs moves through the chamber. Gnomes glance up from ovens, pause mid-slice at tables, turn heads from their laughter. Their eyes fixed on you, not hostile, not skeptical, but curious, weighing. The apron gnome snurts. Well then, they'll need a plate. In seconds, you're pulled into the whirl. A seat at a long wooden bench appears beneath you, mugs filled with spiced cider shoved into your hands, plates piled with slices from pies you don't have names for. The crusts flake at the touch of your fork, fillings ooze fragrant steam, sugar crystals glitter like frost. You hesitate, remembering the pedestal pie, the whispers, the trap. The little gnome nudges you with a grin. These ones don't talk. They sing, maybe, but only if you hum first. So you take a cautious bite. It's everything. Warm, sweet, tart, crisp, soft, layers of flavor folding together so perfectly it feels impossible. Not just taste, but memory. Sunlight on a lazy afternoon. Laughter with someone you trusted. Comfort when you thought none would come. You exhale shakily. Okay, I get it now. Why people risk the sour curse. The bearded gnome sits across from you, spoon resting on his shoulder. And why we don't sell to just anyone. Around you, gnomes dig in, clinking mugs, swapping pies across tables, laughing until cider spills. The hearth feels alive in a way the glowing corridors didn't. Not testing, not judging, just living. But even through the joy, a question lingers in your chest, heavy as the bite you just swallowed. You set your fork down, meeting the elder's gaze. So tell me, why kindness? Why pies only for the kind? The hearth quiets. Even laughter dims. Dozens of gnome eyes turn your way, waiting for his answer.
The bearded gnome leans back on the bench, folds his small hands over the curve of his spoon, and studies you like you're another ingredient on his table. The hearth is so quiet, you can hear the pop of berry filling bubbling in the nearby ovens. Finally, he says, because pies remember. The words settle like crumbs, simple but sticky. You frown. Pies remember? You mean like sentient pie? Because that's terrifying. A ripple of chuckle stirs the hearth, but the elder doesn't smile. His eyes stay steady. Every crust we shape, every filling we stir, carries a piece of us. Not just hands and spice, heart, intent, kindness baked in. The orchard gives us that gift, but it doesn't come free. The little gnome leans closer, his lantern now dim and warm, like a candle between you. If someone eats a pie without kindness in them, the sweetness curdles. The orchard recoils. That's when sour ones are born.
Around you, other gnomes nod, murmuring agreement. One lifts his mug and adds, "We've seen travelers hungry for power, greedy for more. They bite into kindness they don't carry, and the pie twists them into something else." "Something worse," another chimes in, voice low. "Things that walk like people but speak with hunger." You shiver, picturing the shadows you glimpsed earlier in the roots. So kindness isn't flavor? It's armor? The elder shakes his head. Not armor. Soil. Without it, nothing good grows. He taps the table with one finger. You passed because you gave kindness even when no one promised you pie. You carried the crate. You helped. You refused easy sweetness when it cost too much. That is the soil. You swallow hard. The pie on your plate steams, golden and fragile. But I messed up before. I've been selfish. I heard it back there in the voices. Doesn't that mean I'll sour too? The elder's gaze softens, lines around his eyes easing. Everyone carries bitterness. The orchard doesn't demand perfection, only intent, only the choice to plant better seeds. The little gnome beams at you like a lantern lit inside him. That's why the pies are gifts, not trades. You can't buy kindness. You can only live it. The hearth hums again, laughter bubbling back, mugs clinking, oven sighing. But your chest stays tight, heavy with the weight of what they're saying. Because he's right. Buying a pie would have been easy. Living kindness outside this glowing crown, with no roots to guide you, that's the harder thing, the real test. You take another bite, slow this time. The sweetness lingers on your tongue, but the warmth spreads deeper, like the orchard is watching through every crumb. The bearded gnome sets down his spoon and rises. Instantly, the hearth hushes again. He gestures toward you. This traveler is accepted. The orchard opens its bounty to them. A cheer erupts. Gnomes lift pies high, mugs slosh cider, flour dusts the air like confetti. Someone bangs a rolling pin against the bench in rhythm. You can't help but grin, even through the unease. Then the elder holds up a hand, and the noise fades once more. His tone grows low, weighty. But pies are not prizes. They are burdens. To carry them is to carry our promise. Share only with kindness, never with greed. Protect them, for they protect no one who twists them. He turns to you. Will you swear it? Your pulse thuds in your ears. Dozens of gnome eyes fix on you again, shimmering in lantern light. The little gnome squeezes your arm, gentle but firm. You clear your throat. I swear. I'll protect them. I'll share them only with those who deserve. The hearth seems to exhale at once, a warm breeze rustling the hanging lantern fruits. The ovens flare brighter, pies steaming higher. The elder nods once, solemn. Then you may carry the orchard's gift. From a nearby table, a gnome brings forth a pie unlike the others. Its crust gleams faintly, dusted with something golden, and the steam rises in patterns that curl like letters you can't quite read. The smell is sharper, richer, like every flavor at once. The pie is set before you. You stare at it, uneasy and awed. That's mine? The elder nods. Yours to carry.
yours to guard, yours to share, if you dare. Your hands hover, trembling, before finally touching the warm plate. The hearth bursts again with cheer, but beneath it you feel the weight of the pie, heavier than it should be. Not just food, a promise, a test that isn't over.
The pie warms your palms as though it has a pulse, steady and alive. The crust glimmers in the lamplight, its golden sheen catching every flicker of the hearth's glow. Gnomes clap your back, offer mugs, cheer until the very wood seems to vibrate with their voices. But none of them touch the pie. Not even a finger strays near the edge of its plate. You notice that immediately. The little gnome, lantern tucked beneath his arm now, whispers at your elbow. It's yours, only yours. If another hand lays claim without kindness in it, the orchard takes offense. Good to know, you mutter. So no pie sharing at the office potluck. Still, you feel the weight, the real weight, pressing down. This isn't just food, it's responsibility. The bearded gnome clears his throat and the hearth quiets again. He taps his spoon once against the floor. Traveler, the orchard has given its answer. You may leave with its gift, but heed the warning. Pies never lie. Share with one unworthy, and they'll show you the truth of their soul. Your stomach knots. Sounds messy. He shrugs, beard twitching. Truth often is. The gnomes begin to bustle again, laughter rising like smoke, ovens clattering with trays. Your place at the table no longer feels like center stage. It feels like a pocket of calm amid the storm of their celebration. The little gnome squeezes your sleeve. Come, he says, time to go before the orchard changes its mind. You stand carefully, pie balanced in your hands. It's heavier than before, as though the crust absorbs every step, every heartbeat. The gnome guides you back toward the spiral staircase, now open and glowing faintly from within. The bearded elder follows behind, his spoon a slow, steady rhythm against the roots. The climb down feels longer than the climb up. Each step hums beneath your boots, the tree's pulse syncing with your own. You pass through the golden chamber, where the mirror once stood, now empty. You pass the root bridges, the river of cider, the grove where whispering pies once tempted you. Each place feels changed, quieter, as if bowing its head after the ceremony. Finally, you step out beneath the orchard's canopy once more. Moonlight spills across the clearing, silver and cold compared to the hearth's golden glow. The forest beyond waits, dark and unblinking. The little gnome stops, lifting his lantern high. This is where we part ways. His voice is softer now, tinged with something like sadness. You walk the world again. The orchard won't follow. You shift the pie in your arms, but it'll be watching. He nods, always, in every crumb. The bearded gnome steps forward, his shadow long in the moonlight. Remember what we told you. Kindness or sourness, that choice is yours and yours alone. You want to say something clever, one last sarcastic quip to break the weight in the air, but your throat catches. Instead, you nod, words quiet. I'll remember. The gnomes step back, lantern dimming, spoon lowering. The orchard rustles around you, leaves whispering like applause, like warning, like farewell. And then you're alone. The path stretches before you, dark and uncertain. The pie warms your arms, steady, alive. Behind you, the orchard closes its doors, roots knitting together, sealing its secrets away. You take a breath, step forward. The world outside will test you, harsher than any mirror, subtler than any root. But now you carry the orchard's gift, and with every step, every choice, you'll decide what it truly means. Because pies don't lie, and neither does kindness. The trees thin, the air cools, your steps slow. The warmth in your arms is steady, patient, forgiving. The pie's glow softens with the night. You breathe deeper, the forest fading to silence. No laughter, no whispers, no tricks, only stillness, long and low, like the world exhaling at last. Your stride loosens, shoulders unwinding. The pie rests against you without weight now, as though it floats, as though it's part of your heartbeat. Branches sway overhead, their movement unhurried, the leaves murmuring in rhythms soft as lullabies. Moonlight spills across the path, not sharp silver anymore, but pale milk glow, hazy and safe. You follow it without hurry. Step by step, the orchard opens, stretching, softening. Your thoughts slow to match its pace. The sharp edges of memory blur, the mirrors sting, the whispers, the bridge, slipping away like crumbs brushed from a cloth. All that lingers is warmth, sweetness, the hum of something alive carried with you. The path widens into clearing, grass bends beneath you, cool, forgiving. The air smells of apples, cinnamon, faint sugar, faint enough that you can't tell if it's real or just memory clinging to you. Your eyes close. You don't need to see anymore. The orchard has already left its mark. The night folds around you, long and gentle. The pie rests steady, and your breath evens with the rhythm of its glow. And you understand, kindness is not noise, nor test, nor blade. It's quiet, persistent, a warmth that stays. You let that warmth carry you now until even thought gives way to stillness, and stillness gives way to rest. Good night.